UFC Fight Night Vegas 48, Walker vs. Hill is not the best fight night card in the world. However, I'm going to break it down anyway and give my prediction for every single fight on the card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main event, starting with the early prelim opener of Jonathan Pearce versus Christian Rodriguez. I am going to be going with Jonathan Pearce here to start off the card. I do believe he gets this one done over Christian Rodriguez, and I'm going to predict that he gets this one done in deep waters by a third round rear naked choke submission over Christian Rodriguez, because something smells disastrous about Christian Rodriguez's record and especially his level of opponent so far in his career. Now, he has looked good. He beat his last opponent, who was 19-36, by a verbal finish in the first round. Okay? 19-36 was his last opponent before he got signed to the UFC at the NAFC Super Brawl card. This smells to me like a prospect who's about to get derailed. He beats Junior Cortez, who was 5-1. That was by unanimous decision on a Contender Series, and that was a decent performance, don't get me wrong. But he didn't do enough and didn't do as much as Dana White wanted him to, so did not get the contract on that Contender Series performance that he had. But before that, he fought a couple of decent guys. 2-0 John Pham, beaten by second round rear naked choke. He beat a guy who was 4-2, Charalampos Gregoriou, by third round TKO, which was good. I saw him once get a head kick KO. I believe it was that one that he got the head kick in. I've watched a couple of his fights. But then 6-9 Jason Huntley in your third fight, and you got the win there. I understand that he is actually getting these victories. However, I feel like there's a smelly record here. A really smelly record. And when you're taking on 19-36 Ryan McIntosh to get yourself into the UFC, that tells me your coaches have no confidence in you whatsoever. And I think that's going to play out in this fight. I think he's going to have some decent moments early on. Pearce is going to give him some problems in the grappling that he's never felt before, because he's never fought that level of opponent. This is a JSP we're talking about here. Great grappler in the featherweight division. And I do believe Jonathan Pearce is going to get this one done by third round rear naked choke. He just beat Omar Morales, which is a good win. Before that, he beat Kai Kamaka by second round TKO. And I know that doesn't seem like a great win at the time because it's Kai Kamaka, but he was 8-2 at the time. And since then, it's been very hard for someone to beat him clearly, and he's also won his fight since leaving the UFC. Went to a draw with Danny Chavez, went to a split decision loss to TJ Brown that some people think he could have won. He beat Tony Kelly, who's now just beaten Randy Costa within the UFC. So I think JSP has proven that he's above bottom feeder level in the UFC featherweight division, and I think that now he's going to go out there, take this guy into deep water, and finish him in the third round by rear naked choke. Moving on to another fight on the card, Gabriel Benitez versus David Onama. I'm going to go with David Onama here over Gabriel Benitez. I like David Onama. I almost picked him in his debut against Mason Jones, and I'm like, I got some Welsh in me, you know what I mean? So I was almost going to go against every bias I may have, just to say, Onama might beat Mason Jones. You know what I mean? Mason Jones, he had a tough scrap with Mike Davis, took a lot of damage. He also had that performance against Alan Patrick, which wasn't crazy. It was a weird one. You know, he did look good against Alan Patrick, but how good really is Alan Patrick at this point in his career? And I was thinking, you know what? If David Onama had a full camp, I'd pick him to beat Mason Jones, but because it was on short notice and he was on holiday, I was like, I ain't going to pick him against Mason Jones. It's up a weight class. At featherweight, maybe you'd do a bit better. And I didn't pick him. But I tell you this, if he did have a full camp, he probably would have beaten Mason Jones at lightweight. And Mason Jones ain't no slouch in the lightweight division either. So I think David Onama is going to beat Gabriel Benitez. At this point in Gabriel Benitez's career, I think the durability levels are a little bit lower than maybe they have been previously, you know. Used to be a scrapper. Go back and forth with people, and he's been KO'd a few times now in his career. Andre Philly hit him with a head kick KO badly in the first round. Brutal head kick KO. Finished off with punches afterwards. Sadiq Youssef KO'd him in the first round as well. He just got finished by TKO from punches whilst having his back taken by Billy Quarantillo. I understand these are some really good opponents, and he is wicked fast in those early rounds. But I'm going to trust Omar Morales. I'm going to trust David Onama to go out there and get a first round KO on Gabriel Benitez. I'm messing up all the names right now. But David Onama, very, very good prospect. And I reckon he's going to go out there and get a first round KO on Gabriel Benitez, who's had one too many wars in his career, coming towards the tail end of his career as well, taking on a 27-year-old hungry up-and-comer out of Uganda. Very, very good fighter. Trains at a good gym, Gloria MMA and Fitness with James Krause. And he had a very close fight with Mason Jones on short notice up a weight class, and that does mean something to me. Now, he did lose that fight, but again, a very, very close fight, an extremely close fight. So I think he's going to go out there, get the job done. He's fought a couple of decent opponents in his career, but he's never really had that big jump up. I think this will be a decent jump up for him, and I think he's going to crack Benitez's chin, similar to how Sodiq Yusuff did, but maybe without getting rocked in the first place. David Onama gets this one done. Looking forward to this fight massively, though, and I do think he gets this one done quite convincingly. He's a good prospect, so watch out for him, and honestly, this could be a guy who could make it to the rankings at some point in the featherweight division. So this is actually a decent reason to tune into the early prelims of this card, if you are interested, because David Onama is an extremely good fighter, and he's got a big reach advantage, 8 centimeter reach advantage, which I believe is about 3 inches or something like that, so that's going to be very useful in the featherweight division. I think he cracks Gabriel Benitez in the first round and puts him away that easily. Moving on to another fight on the card, Jessica Rose Clark versus Stephanie Egger. I'm going to go with Jessica Rose Clark here. Stephanie Egger's good, but it seems her level of grappling only works against a certain tier of opponent. Girls who have decent grappling capabilities like Tracy Cortez can edge out close decisions against her and stuff like that. But of course she can beat Shayna Youngs, who don't really have great grappling, who we've seen be out-grappled many times previously in her career. I believe Stephanie Egger's a judoka black belt, or I believe a Swiss judoka black belt, something along those lines. So she could use that here, but Jessica Rose Clark is an extremely athletic girl. She's got good grappling herself, which she showed in her last fight against a bigger opponent. And I think she's going to do well here as well. She's got good stand-up, and I think that's where she's going to win this fight. I think the grappling will even each other out. I think she's got great grappling. She's been training at AKA with DC on her wrestling, so I think that's going to come in very, very useful here against Stephanie Egger. And I think if it takes place on the feet, where I expect it to take place 70% of the time, I think Rose Clark's got a bit of boxing, and I think she'll outstrike Stephanie Egger there and win this by decision in a boring fashion, 29-28. Moving on up the card, Diana Belbita versus Gloria de Paula. I'm going to go with Diana Belbita. Gloria de Paula is actually better than her record may suggest. She does look decent in certain moments with her technique, but just very, very inconsistent in her performances. Doesn't seem like she's built for this game in a way. Like, she's already been KO'd in her career at women's strawweight. Like, that's never a good sign to see. We saw that with Ribas early on in her career, and maybe we should have seen it coming again in the rematch against Marina Rodriguez that she had. She just doesn't really take power shots too well. Now, that head kick from Cheyenne Bays was or Cheyenne Vlismas, or Cheyenne Delidze, should I fucking say. That head kick from Cheyenne Delidze was a very good head kick, and that probably will KO a lot of people, but seeing someone KO'd that early in their career, it is worrying, and she's very inexperienced as well. So I'm going to go with Diana Belbita, still a young fighter. A Moldovan who do quite well per population in the UFC. I believe they have like a 1 in 900,000 chance of having a top UFC light heavyweight or heavyweight if you look at the actual numbers. I think they've got Spivak, Kutalaba, Romanov, and they've only got a population of like 2.7 million, so they're doing something right over there. I just think Diana Belbita is going to get this one done. A slight reach advantage is always going to help as well, and she's very, very experienced, and she's beat some decent opponents herself. Now, she has lost to some bad opponents, but that's women's MMA at these bottom levels, so I'm going to go with the more experienced Diana Belbita. In absence of other evidence that you could go towards here because of how bad both of them really are, the experience is what stands out to me. 14-6 to 5-4. Come on. I'm going to go with Diana Belbita here by decision, 30-27, something like that. Moving on up the card, Chaz Skelly versus Mark Striegl. I'm going to go with Chaz Skelly here over Mark Striegl. Now, Mark Striegl, both 18-3, great records. Mark Striegl hasn't fought the best of opponents in his career so far. I think we can all agree if you've looked at it. Now, that's not through like lack of trying. He has lost to some decent fighters. Like, of course, he fought Said Nurmagomedov in his last fight, but there is something to be said about the amount of times this guy took on some subpar levels of competition. When he was 10-0, after beating a 4-5 opponent, his jump up was against a 35-23 opponent. I don't trust that whatsoever. Now, he is good. He's got good grappling, but so does Chaz Skelly. And Chaz Skelly's actually been having some decent performances. He beat Jordan Griffin. He beat Chris Gertishmacher, which is now a decent win because I believe Chris Gertishmacher beat Rafa Garcia in the division as well, so that's a decent win. He's had a bunch of decent wins in his career. A good amount of wins earlier on in his career as well. He lost to Darren Elkins and Masad Bektik in the UFC, but other than that, he had a pretty decent ratio. I think in his first however many fights, what was it? In his first 8 fights, he was 6-2 in the UFC, so this is a very good UFC veteran. fought some very good opponents, and I think he's going to go out there, and you know what I think? They're going to have some really awkward stand-up exchanges, and Striegl's going to shoot a bad takedown, and Skelly's got a nasty dash choke. He clamps onto it very well, and I think he's going to utilize that here against Mark Striegl. So I'm going to call a first round dash choke or anaconda choke submission, any of the variations for Chaz Skelly, based on Striegl going for a takedown at an incorrect moment, like he even did against Said Nurmagomedov in his last fight. So I'm going to go with Chaz Skelly here, getting a job done by sub in the first round. Moving on up the card, Jesse Strader versus Chad Anheliger. I'm going to go with... My goodness, this is a tough one to actually score, but I'm going to go... No, it's not tough. I'm going to go Chad Anheliger, but we don't know much about him. He's not got the best of records. Now, he did beat a very good opponent. I just watched a free fight they put up on YouTube that he had on the Contender Series against a guy, Muin Gafarov, who is a good prospect in his own right, 17-3. He dropped Gafarov in the first round, I believe edged out the third round or something like that, and edged out one of the other later rounds that he had. Beat Brady Highstam, which is a very good win in the third round, and he's beaten a bunch of good opponents recently, and you know what? I am going to go with him because he was at one point in his career 2-5. So his record does not tell the full tale of his career. He was 2-5. He's now 11-5. You can see that as a guy who's 11-5, but you could also see that as a guy who's 9-0 in his last 9 fights against good opponents. Brady Highstand, Craig McLean, which is a great name to have just in general. And then recently Muin Gafarov. I can't ignore that. So I'm going to have to go with Chad Anheliger here. Older guy, but I think he's going to be more hungry because of that. And I think he's going to beat Jesse Strader. And Jesse Strader just hasn't really impressed me so far in his career. Fought a decent opponent who was 4-0 and beaten by first round KO. He does have power, but Anheliger is a tough guy. He can take big shots. He's known to sort of wear on fighters as they go on. So I think he's going to get this one into the later rounds and get this one done by third round TKO or something like that with body shots against a cage. Of course... And Jesse Strader coming off a first-round KO loss against Montel Jackson. He's also been KO'd by Marcelo Rojo, who is another guy who recently lost to Kyler Phillips. So I'm going to trust in Chad Anheliger here to get the job done. And I think he will win this one by third-round TKO, breaking down Strader as the fight goes on, and eventually taking over with his volume, toughness, and pace. Moving on up the card, Parker Porter versus Alan Badout. We're on the main card here. Wow, this is a weak card. I'm going with Parker Porter over Alan Badout. Alan Badout is he's Alan Badout, I guess. But Parker Porter's very experienced. And I'm starting to not count out fat shit looking heavyweights. Like, you've got to give them the credit they deserve. These fat boys at heavyweight have been doing some work recently. Like, I remember a time I was counting out Jake Collier. I'm not counting out Jake Collier against some people now. Just because Tom Aspinall abused him, or just because Daukaus abused Porter, doesn't mean they're now terrible. Those guys went on to be now top-ranked heavyweights. You know what I mean? So I'm going to trust in Parker Porter's experience here. He's got good grappling awareness. He's got good toughness as well. He's been around for a very long time. He just beat Chase Sherman. Before that, he beat Josh Parisian. Lost to Daukaus, but beat a couple of decent opponents before that as well. And he's just been around for ages. He's been in the game for a while. He's going to know some veteran tricks and stuff. And I just feel like Alan Badout, although powerful and can be quite random at times, it's not like he has devastating KO power. He won his fight to get into the UFC by disqualification in the third round from his opponent's end. And before that, he fought an 0-2 opponent. He's got KO'd by Daukaus. He's been KO'd before in his career. I'm going to say this is going to be a fun scrap over 3 rounds. Maybe Badout starts doing well in the third, but I think the first 2 rounds are going to be controlled. No, the first round will be good for Badout. The second 2 rounds, Porter will start creeping on him a little bit and start using that veteran intellect and experience to wear him down in those later rounds and win a 29-28 close decision. That's going to be a very fun scrap. Moving on up the card, Joaquin Buckley versus Abdul Razak Alhassan. I'm going to go with Joaquin Buckley. Fuckly. I'm going to go with Joaquin Buckley. I was thinking Abdul Razak Alhassan, and maybe I'm going to be proven massively wrong here, but Buckley's way fucking bigger than this guy, man. And I've been watching both of them fight recently. And I feel like I was making a statement that Abdul Razak Alhassan is going to win this fight based on just being way more technical than Joaquin Buckley. But when you really watch Joaquin Buckley fight, especially in his last one, dude has some really nice combos in the boxing realm. I know he got head kicks by Alessio De Chirico. It was partially blocked. It bounced off the temple. It put him down. What are you going to do? Yeah, I mean, that's just... That happens sometimes. I'm not going to put that down to a weak chin. He has been KO'd before in his career by Kevin Holland. But those are perfect shots by Kevin Holland. And he took that fight on very short notice as well, you know. He took very perfect shots where Holland, like, landed when the punch was halfway extended and the punch, like, extended way past the face of Buckley, making full whiplash on Buckley's chin. So he did get put down in that fight. He has been put down by De Chirico. But I think he's going to get out there and just sort of beat up Razak Alhassan. I think he's a little bit more savage than Alhassan. Alhassan can be broken out there, can be worn down, can be mentally broken. I believe we saw that against Jacob Malkoun. Buckley's more likely to go for takedowns and stuff like that. He's a bigger guy. He's got a decent reach advantage as well here, which I believe is going to be very effective for him. So I think Buckley's going to win this one. And I think he's actually got better cardio. Really underrated cardio. I think Buckley's actually, upon rewatching some of his fights, especially the Arroyo one and some other performances that he's had, he's actually pretty good at what he does, and he's a monstrous guy, and I think he's just going to beat up the old man of Abdul Razak Alhassan and be that younger, hungrier lion when it needs to happen. Now, either guy could win by first round KO, and I'm going to go with like under 2 rounds in my prediction here, but I'm going to lean towards the younger guy and Joaquin Buckley with the reach, with the size, and with the momentum right now in his career, so I'm going with the Buckley Meister. Even though Abdul Razak Alhassan head kick KO De Chirico, I'm still going with Buckley, getting after him, getting busy early on, and trading big shots and doing the better of the two of them. Moving on up the card, Jim Miller versus Nikolas Motta. Now, I see a lot of people picking Jim Miller. I believe Tapology has it... Give me a second. Tapology has it 68% in favor of Jim Miller. I don't agree with that. Now, I know he's the underdog, and a lot of people just pick based on, like, well, we've got to pick an underdog, so he's a good underdog. We'll pick one of the underdogs, you know what I mean? But in my opinion, he is a good underdog, but I don't think he wins. So that's not what my prediction... I'd be disingenuous to say I think he's going to win and he's a great underdog. I think he's a good underdog. He's got good value on him. Jim Miller's always got good value as an underdog. It's just who Jim Miller is with these upcoming lightweight prospects. He can beat them. Roosevelt Roberts. He more recently beat Eric Gonzalez. But those two guys aren't, in my opinion, anywhere near the level of prospects that Nikolas Motta is. And Nikolas Motta has two things that those last two prospects that Jim Miller beat didn't have. So he beat Eric Gonzalez. He beat Roosevelt Roberts. Very cool. They are not too good. They don't have the strongest of durabilities, okay, or chins in general. And Eric Gonzalez was 14-5 going into that fight, and arguably shouldn't have really been in the UFC anyway. Let's be real. Got KO'd in the second round, but also still really badly hurt Miller in that fight and wobbled him. Miller gets rocked in a lot of his fights, and he has had a long career. I feel as though Nikolas Motta is going to get this one done. I'm going to say not third round. I'm saying late second round TKO for Nikolas Motta. I think he'll wear down Jim Miller. They'll start trading some shots. And I just think Motta's chin's going to be a bit better. He's got a solid chin on him. A very good chin on him. And I think that's going to carry over here into this fight. He's got very good technique. He's a young guy, 29, just coming into his prime. He beat Joe Solecki in a very good fight by third round TKO. A guy who did quite easily beat Jim Miller in their fight by controlling him on the ground. Nikolas Motta managed to get out of those grappling situations where Miller got out grappled. So even if you're going to say, the old dog Miller's going to show him some grappling tricks, Joe Solecki couldn't really do what he wanted to do with Motta in their fight with the grappling, and Motta eventually ended up TKOing him in the third round by knockout, quite badly as well. But Miller was able to be controlled in areas by Solecki. Could it be an improving Solecki? It could, but I'm going to use that as evidence to say that Motta's not going to get exposed in the grappling. Now, he has been KO'd before in his career. He has been KO'd in his career before. But I think he's shown a good chin, and recently in his career over the past year, especially from what I saw on the Contender Series, he does get hit, but he's got a very good awareness to how to not get KO'd anymore. Very good composure early on. I don't think Miller's going to be exploding like some young guys on the regional scene, and I think they're going to be trading shots throughout the first round, both guys getting hurt, both guys landing big shots, but I think the toughness, youth, and durability of Nikolas Motta is going to carry him through, and I think his technique will carry him into those later rounds, and I think you'll get a second round finish. Now, of course, there is a chance, if you want to pick Miller, I'd say pick him in the first round by KO. Might be some good money on that. He's already an underdog. First round KO for Miller might be a good pick, but I'm going to go with Motta. Good grappling, better than the other prospects that Miller's beaten before, and even better than some of the prospects that Miller's lost to before in Joe Solecki, because he beat him by third round TKO. So I'm going to trust in Nikolas Motta. and I think he's really good. And I think he's quite technical with his hands. And I think he'll beat up Jim Miller at the end of the second and put him away. Moving on up the card to another good fight, which is Kyle Daukaus versus Jamie Pickett. I'm going to go with Kyle Daukaus here over Jamie Pickett. I think there's a lot of obvious picks to make on this card. Tapology has this 88% in favour of Daukaus over Pickett. And I think that mainly is because, no pun intended, Pickett does his best work against defence. It's perfect how these names work out sometimes, isn't it? Deontay Wilder, the Wild Puncher. You know what I mean? It's weird how some of these names work out, but Jamie Pickett does his best work against defence, or the cage, I guess you could say as well. He does his work there, and Daukaus is actually really good in that position. He's got a lot of weird grips that he uses in that position. We saw that against Kevin Holland, and I think he's going to be able to sort of neutralise the cage-holding game of Jamie Pickett, and if they're at range on the feet, I think Daukaus is a little bit more sound, technically. He had a great grappling match against Brendan Allen, who's a good grappler in that division and showed that he has really good jiu-jitsu as well. So I think if they end up on the ground, Daukaus is going to have more success. There is a chance that Pickett gets a KO blow on Daukaus, but Daukaus has really shown a good chin in his career. He's never been finished by TKO in the pro scene. He's been finished in the amateur scene a couple of times by sub and TKO at one point in the amateur scene, but that's amateurs. He showed really good composure as a pro, learnt a lot as an amateur, beat some really good opponents as a pro as well. 12-12 Jonathan Webb and 8-1 Michael Lombardo, and he also had a good fight with Allen on short notice in his debut, and a good fight with Phil Hawes, who's got great power in his hands, and Daukaus actually rocked Hawes in that fight. So if you can take the power of Phil Hawes, I'm going to say you can take the power of Jamie Pickett, and I think he's going to be able to sort of nullify the clinch game against the cage, but I'm going to assume a very, very fucking boring clinch fest against the cage, 29-28 Kyle Daukaus. Pickett might win in like terms of physicality in the early rounds, but as the rounds go on, I'm going to side with Daukaus, getting the job done against the cage and winning it that way. Moving on up the card to another amazing fight, which is the main event. Messed that one up massively. Johnny Walker versus Jamahal Hill. I'm going to go with Jamahal Hill in the main event. I'm going to go with Jamahal Hill by first round KO in the main event as well, I think. I think Johnny Walker's range control and distance control is just not good enough. Not good enough. And it's one of two different things. It's either he doesn't do anything, or he's in range to land and he's getting hit on the chin. Now, he's very good, very explosive. Jamahal Hill's a very tall opponent that he's going to be taking on with a very long reach as well. I think that's going to mitigate some of the weird techniques that he does, like a flying knee. I don't see Hill sort of falling into a flying knee the way a Misha Serkinov would, or getting caught up in the clinch and just blasted with elbows. I think Walker's got a massive chin problem, and I don't think he's a savage. I think Hill was like a thuggish savage of the fight game. You know what I mean? He's not scared to put his head down, not scared to get a bit scrappy. I was wrong about him in the Jimmy Crute fight. I wish Crute would have tried to grapple a bit earlier, but I don't see Walker grappling here. So I see this being a stand-up fight. And while it's on the feet with Jamahal Hill, he fucks you up. Straight up. He does fuck you up on the feet. Like, Paul Craig got him to the ground, and by pulling him to the ground, not by taking him down, by pulling guard, whilst got a grip of the arm of Jamahal Hill. So it's not like you can even question too badly the takedown defense of Jamahal Hill, because we haven't really seen it exposed yet. You just assume that maybe, his hands are so good, there must be a weakness here. That's why I would pick a guy like Jimmy Crute against him. But with a stand-up guy like Johnny Walker, who hasn't got the best of chins, with the momentum that Jamahal Hill's on right now after an amazing first-round KO and a great call-out as well, he's got the fight that he wants. That tells me maybe he understands this is a great matchup for him as well, which is going to give him confidence going into this fight. Big main event. I think he's going to shine bright under that circumstance. He seems like the kind of guy where the pressure's on, it does well for him. I know that didn't work out in the Paul Craig fight, but he enjoyed the moment. It's not like he was getting all jittery with all the media questions. He was at the fucking weigh-in doing the USA with the crowd of the big flag. Somebody's going to sleep tomorrow. Somebody's going to sleep. I like Jamahal Hill's energy, and I think he's going to put Johnny Walker to sleep in the first round with a brutal hook as Walker goes for a front kick. Left hook, check hook from Jamahal Hill as Walker goes for like a front kick to the face or something, up on one leg. Hill sleeps him with a big shot. Down goes Walker, and I think Hill gets this one done. Walker's got a chin problem, and his last fight proved that. So, with a guy like Jamahal Hill, I don't even think there's a way of avoiding the scrap. I don't think there's a way of avoiding it. So if Walker wants to play on the outside, Hill's going to cruise forward and start throwing hands. Like, it's not going to be like a Thiago Santos, I'll entertain this game and try and body kick you 3 times around. Hill's going to sort of march him down a bit, track out the octagon, track him down in the octagon, put him against a cage, start landing combinations. And I think when he does, Walker's not going to take the same shots that Hill can. Now, of course, Walker could get it done. He's that explosive of a guy, but evidence suggests to me that Jamahal Hill's going to put this guy out in the first round. Sweet dreams, motherfucker. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Going with my boy Jamahal Hill in the first round by KO. Left hook as Walker goes for a front kick on one leg, out of range, and whilst not covering the range or keeping distance correctly, Hill puts him out in the first round. Like and subscribe. Click that button up there. Toodle pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye. Yeah.